Today on Backwind Stories, we visit the Dewey Cox house and learn more about the families that lived in one of the most iconic homes of the Grassy Creek area of Ashe County, North Carolina. Let's go check it out. Our story begins in 1849 when Solomon Spencer received a land grant. He started a 250-acre farm here. He weatherboarded this structure, which we believe started out as a barn, and added 3 more rooms. According to Ashe County historical records, Andrew Jackson Pierce, who was a justice of the peace, was the next owner of the home. His youngest daughter, Rachel, married Columbus Young in 1884, and they stayed right here because they looked after her parents. In addition, they were big time into the beef cattle business. And let me tell you something, business was good because they made huge additions to the house. Every family that's lived in this house has left its mark, but one generation did so literally, the kids of Rachel and Columbus Young. In fact, Leslie Young wrote a note on the back of this cellar door. She wrote, "I will never forget March 9th, 1904. Well, we've searched and searched as to why that date was so very significant to Leslie, but we couldn't find anything. Was it the date someone passed away? Maybe the date that she met her true love? Or maybe the date that she was locked in the cellar for misbehaving? Perhaps we'll never know, but that's okay because our imaginations can fill in all the details." Leslie also wrote another note right here. "Mama, please remember me when I'm away." Well, I've got news for you, Leslie. We are all going to remember you. Another of Rachel and Columbus's children, a son named Rush Young, also did some writing. He was a member of the 80th, or the Blue Ridge Division of the Army Infantry in World War I, and he wrote a book about his experiences entitled Over the Top with the 80th by a Buck Private. In his book, Young often refers to the dramatic differences between life as a soldier and life growing up on this farm. For example, trumpet reveille at 6 a.m. replaced the warm chimes of a mantel clock, and he went from feather beds to naked bed springs and from handmade quilts to one thin wool blanket issued per soldier in an unheated barracks. Lads like Young went from Mama's homemade buckwheat pancakes and fresh butter and honey to overcooked and unrecognizable mush served with fried horse meat. And speaking of, the garbage cans in the Army mess halls were filled with this inedible Army fare until they posted guards at the trash cans to forbid the throwing away of any uneaten food. The house stayed in the family as the next owner, Haywood Cox, married the granddaughter of Andrew Jackson Pierce. Cox, who had just come back from gold mining in Colorado, married Chloe Clyde Pierce and bought her the house as a wedding present in 1911. Cox died just 8 years later, but his wife, who preferred to go by the name Miss Clyde, ran the house and the farm for the next 60 years. These are the servants' stairs, and people often ask why they're so narrow. Well, the prevailing wisdom is that if the cook gets too big to fit down these stairs, it's time to find a new cook. Miss Clyde's grandchildren recall running up and down the 3 sets of stairs in this house and playing hide-and-go-seek in the quilt trunks. And even though Grandma Clyde had an electric stove, they recall that she made the best biscuits and sausage gravy on the wood stove.
She was really good at, and the biscuits, cornbread, all these vegetables come out of the garden. Fabulous. And she just knew how to cook. She couldn't tell you what to do or how she did it. It just came natural. She'd grab a little of this, a little of that, and it was wonderful.
This room is called the storeroom. One of Miss Clyde's relatives had a dry goods store in nearby Crumpler, and when he passed away, she brought all the inventory here and began selling it out of this room. Old records indicate that people would charge items to the store. One such charge was for 43 cents, not an insignificant sum back then, back when. With only 3 children, Miss Clyde made ends meet by taking in boarders in this big rambling house, but she preferred to work outside, running a team of mules or horses, so the boarders did most of the cooking and cleaning.
She told me that she loved working outside, and she was, everybody said she was a fine horseman, and she could handle horses. I guess saddle them up, put the harness on, drive. I understood she would be on the wagon and they'd load hay on and she'd pack it on and be up on the wagon packing the hay when they went to take it to the barn.
The house never had running water until Miss Clyde fell and broke her hip, and then they built a spring-fed lean-to bathroom on the back side of the house. Her son Dewey recalls how difficult it was to dig the septic system in the rocky soil until a friend recommended using dynamite. That worked a whole lot better. Because Miss Clyde couldn't make it to church in later life, the church came to her. Every Sunday afternoon there was a procession of folks bringing a mess of beans and other good eats, and Miss Clyde would hold court and tell stories. It was said that Miss Clyde was the only one who could get away with cussing on a Sunday.
She was very good at talking to people, but she was a good listener also. I mean, she didn't brag, she wasn't a braggart. She was interested in you. And I think that's the reason so many people liked her so well.
You don't often see wallpaper on the ceilings, but this room had it. What you would see would be newspapers plastered to the walls to keep out the drafts. In the renovation of this home, they found newspapers on the walls dating back to the 1920s. Do you recognize the color of this porch ceiling? Well, if you guessed Carolina blue or sky blue, you'd be partially correct. The color is Haint Blue. Haint is the Gullah or Old Slave pronunciation for the word haunt. And these angry spirits fear the water, and they won't enter a house if the porch ceilings or the window frames are painted Haint Blue. Now you know. We love exploring and learning new things, and today's word of the day is cantilever. We're standing outside of a cantilever barn located on the property that dates back as far as the 1870s. The engineering of this barn was as brilliant as the construction was difficult. Massive beams run the course of this barn to create space under the barn without the need for posts. Farmers could shelter livestock, easily bring the crops in, and also it provided good ventilation for the cribs or the storage of those crops. These outside posts were added later as the function and usage of the barn changed in later years as they added dairy cattle.
Ours was pretty small, and everything was done by hand, all the milking. And my grandma was also good at milking, better than I was. I never was very good. My dad and her could milk, but I always struggled. It didn't come natural, but they milk 3 to 5, I guess, over the years at different times. And then we'd use all we wanted, our family and my grandma, and then we sold the rest and put it out here, and the guy would come along with a flatbed truck with a few boards so the cans wouldn't fall off, and pick them up, take them a little extra money, I guess.
When the current owners of this magnificent home were looking for a property in the mountains, they were about to give up their search when they saw this house. And even though it had sat empty for 25 years, they knew it had incredible potential. When they found the owner, Dewey Cox, and asked if it was for sale, his answer was, yep, to the right people. Well, turns out Doris and Pee Wee Murphy were the right people, and thank goodness.